Hello, Art 3 students. So here I have my 331 example, which has already been drawn as that first step dictates. And then if we are doing different styles, the next step would be to alter parts of it that would need to be altered for those specific style. But because I was doing Zentangle on one, Realism on one, and Collage on the other, I don't necessarily need to alter my actual drawn portion. All I need to do is make sure that I very specifically use each style and each medium within the sections. So as you can see, I have completed my Zentangle portion. I have drawn everything with a pencil first, and then I have gone through and outlined everything with my pen so that I've used an ultrafine tip black Sharpie on parts of it and a regular black Sharpie on other parts. And remember that you can use color even if you do something like a Zentangle, but because I wanted mine to be black and white here, and then full color with a colored pencil, and then full color with collage, I wanted this section completely black and white. So now I am ready to go ahead and start on my colored pencil portion, because remember I'm going to do my collage portion last, since it is literally on the surface of that paper. So these two are both media that go flat directly onto the paper, and then the collage, while it is still two-dimensional, it is putting another medium literally on top of the paper. So I would want to do that one last because I cannot draw over the magazine the same way I can cover over any line that I might accidentally put into the collage portion. So as you will notice, I do have my reference image in front of me on my computer because once again, and as you'll hear me say a lot of times, it is very important when you are working realistically to have a reference image that you are working from visible so that you can actually create that sense of realism in there. So for this particular pair, because it is primarily green, I have quite a few different colors that I'm going to be using. The red might seem a bit out of place, but because green and red are complementary colors, red is an excellent color to use in some of the shadow portions of something that is green, because it will neutralize the green and also help it to have a deeper shadow that is not just a brown or something like that. Because as usual, you will want to make sure that you pay attention to the color and the value and the placement of your shadows and highlights. And if you will remember from Art 1, we will definitely be talking a lot about the colors within colors. So instead of just doing this pair, one shade or one type of green, I will be using a variety of colors on the pair. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my red to begin with, and I'm just going to start kind of in this shadow area. There's a shadow here, and there is a shadow over here. So what I'm going to do is just put a very little bit of red on the shadow part where it seems to be the darkest. And as usual, with any type of shading, you do want to make sure that you are holding your pencil pretty far back, not close to the tip of the pencil, so that you have as much of your pencil tip touching the paper as possible, so that your lines are nice and smooth and they are not causing any sort of mark that you don't want. So then there is a shadow here, and this shadow is darker, so I am going to go ahead and make the red a little bit darker as well. It is also larger, so it will cover a little bit more of that space. But I do still want to make sure that I fade back into white. I do not just want to have an abrupt transition from red to white here. Now, if you were doing an object that is metallic or glassy, you might have some very abrupt color and value transitions. But since I am doing a pair for my example, there are not very many abrupt value transitions. So I want to make sure that my drawing reflects that. The shadow kind of dips down here. There is a reflected light on this portion, so I'm going to leave that white for now. And remember, when you are working with colored pencil, similarly to when you're working with most types of paint, if you have an area where the highlight is white, you want to leave the white showing at this point. So that might be sort of the beginning of my pear in terms of shading. It might seem a little bit weird, once again, that it is red at this point. But now I'm going to go ahead and go back over that with a dark green. Still not pressing down very hard, because I will eventually be going over that section once again with a lighter green that is sort of the generic color of my pear. But you will see that the green and the red are starting to already mix, which then kind of creates a brown color or a darker type of green in that shadow space, which is exactly what I was going for. So once again, looking for the colors within colors does take a little extra time, but it is well worth it because it will help you produce a much stronger representation of the object that you are drawing. So now I'm just going to look for where the shadow is a little bit less dark, and it's just going to have some of that green there. But once again, I am still going to be fading into the white of that paper. There's a green shadow on the far side of the stem here. But then there's a highlight right next to that, so I'm going to fade it into that white. I'm going to darken this part of the green a little bit. Once again, I am looking more at my reference image than I am at my own drawing, which is going to be crucial when you are working representationally, because you need to be able to look at what you are drawing, and eventually your brain will sort of train itself to follow what you are seeing and to tell your hand sort of where to put the pencil. It sounds odd, but the more you practice it, the more you will understand what I mean, and the more easily and naturally it will come to you. At first, it's going to feel really, really weird. So here I'm still just kind of putting the underpainting, which just means that I'm laying down sort of where the shadows will go, so that as I do each subsequent layer, I already have sort of the shadow spaces dictated. And then this part is a little darker, so I'm going to be pressing down a little bit harder in here, but still fading that into the next value so that I get nice smooth transitions still. So it's definitely kind of tedious, and it definitely does require a lot of careful observation. But once again, the more you get used to it, the more you practice it, the easier it will become, and the more you'll see those colors that are in the other colors. So once again, just still working on that sort of darker shadow area in here, kind of covering over the red so that the red really becomes more of a shadow, more of a feeling almost, than an actual color that is in that pear. There is a little bit of a shadow here. Now obviously it does get cut off by my line there, but I still want to make sure that I put the part of it that I do see. And if I do go over this line a little bit, it's not that big a deal because I know that I'm going to be doing collage on that bottom portion. So I will easily be able to cover over any sort of stray mark that I make in that section. So this whole spot here is just going to be a very light version of this particular type of green at this point. Going to darken this a little bit more. So as you can see, I am building up in layers, but not every single layer is all over the place. Sometimes a layer is very restricted to a certain area within your drawing. There's kind of a divot here that gets pretty dark, but then fades into the lighter value all around it. So I'm just going to get that in there. Remember that you can use sort of a circular motion with your shading to help you with roundness and to help prevent marks being too vertical or too obvious. So I'm just kind of fading that divot out. There's just a little bit of darkness over here. But once again, this is mostly reflected light, so it's really quite light. So then the next thing I'm going to do is use this other green, which is a bit of a lighter green and a bit more of a golden type of green. So it's got a little bit of brown already mixed in. So it's a very accurate color for my reference image. And I'm basically just going to be going over everything that I have already done and adding this color where I see the next value within my pear. So still not on the lightest values yet, but getting there. So I'm just going to continue to build up this first part, so to speak. It's not really the first layer anymore, but it is the first combination of colors here. And now we will start to see more of this sort of golden green color, because there are some areas where there's not a highlight, it's kind of just a mid-tone, and this is essentially my main mid-tone color for this reference image. And remember, you can turn the page whatever direction you need. So about here, for instance, I need it to fade this way. So for me, the easier thing to do is turn the page, because as a right-handed person, it's easier for me to shade from left to right. And knowing that, that is exactly what I should do. Because anytime you can work smarter and make something a little bit easier for yourself, your work is bound to turn out better and you will get less frustrated, which means you'll be able to enjoy it more. So I've still got a little more to do with this particular type of green first, and then I would be going in with some yellow, maybe a little bit of a brighter green, and maybe even some white. So that will be the next demonstration video for this particular example.